Mario Party is one of my favorite game series, taking the fun of classic tabletop games and then blowing it out of the water with mechanics and modes only possible in a video game. You thought Uno ruined friendships? Pfft, child's play. When you're done with this, all players involved are sure to hate each other. Since the very first entry on N64 all the way up to Mario Party 8 on the Wii, these games shined as the pinnacle of their genre, with developer Hudson Soft making it difficult for even Nintendo's own internal teams to compete. However, in 2012, when Hudson Soft was absorbed into Konami, Nintendo was forced to give the series to their internal studio NDCube, and it's never really been the same since. The games were still fun, don't get me wrong, but they ended up changing the gameplay in uninteresting ways and ultimately felt like a huge step back from even the first entries in the series. But in that last Nintendo Direct, we got treated to a first look at the next entry in the series, Super Mario Party Jamboree. And despite that title being a mouthful, seriously, who approved this? This actually looks to be the most promising new Mario Party in over a decade. It seems NDCube has finally hit their stride with the franchise and has actually listened to some criticisms from the fans to deliver what looks to be the biggest game in the series yet. So in this video, allow me to recount what went wrong with the studio's past attempts in the series, how Jamboree appears to be addressing a lot of these issues, and what the now bright future holds for the Mario Party franchise. Let's get into it. Mario Party 9 was NDCube's first real stab at the series, and they took an interesting approach. While they had worked on games similar to the classic Mario parties in the past, Wii Party for example, they decided to switch up the gameplay with their first game starring our favorite plumber. And how did they do this? Well, they put everyone in a car together so you all move at the same time. You can't move independently at all, no matter who rolls the dice, everybody just moves at once. And honestly, I don't see how this makes sense in any world. I could see it maybe working in a co-op scenario, but this is still a competitive game and everyone's just moving together. It really does not work. This also resulted in the boards becoming incredibly linear, and the classic progression system of getting coins to buy stars was completely axed, replaced by the mini-star system. Here, you try to collect the most mini-stars from throughout the board and in mini-games or boss battles. And credit where credit's due, some of these ideas worked really well. NDCube did a great job designing new mini-games for the series, and boss battles are one of the coolest additions to the franchise to date, but they can never really be enjoyed to their fullest extent when the board play is so much more monotonous and predictable. And that's one thing you don't want a Mario Party game to be. These games thrive on chaos and being unpredictable, having the perfect balance of skill and luck so you still feel like you're causing your own success while you're also never truly out of the game. This dynamic was completely lost with 9's new gameplay style, and the game lost a lot of depth because of it. Given this was the first entry in the series with a different developer, though, its flaws were more forgivable. NDCube was still finding its footing with the series, and they wanted to try and deliver a new gameplay experience, something I think is respectable. However, when it begins to become more egregious is at the release of Mario Party 10. Now, you'd think after fan pushback of the car system and the general board play introduced in 9 that NDCube would return back to the classic formula, or at the very least introduce a different new idea. Nope! Keep the car, baby! Mario Kart must be doing something right, has to be the car. Woo! Cars! I am so good at innovating. Yeah, Mario Party 10 just ended up being more the same, keeping and even improving upon the strengths of 9 with great mini-games and boss fights, but also keeping that same main gameplay which doomed its predecessor. At the very least though, the side modes ended up working pretty well. Being a Wii U game, it of course utilized the gamepad, in this case being in the form of Bowser Party. This was an asymmetrical multiplayer mode pitting 4 main players against Bowser on the gamepad. The main players would travel in a car as is standard for the game, but here it actually makes sense as they're playing in co-op. The main gist of it is the players actually have health, and if any point Bowser catches up to them, he'll put them in a 1v4 Bowser minigame in which they can lose their health and potentially be knocked out of the game. They can collect more health throughout the board instead of mini-stars, and they win if they reach the end before Bowser knocks them all out. All in all, this mode is super fun, as it actually takes the weaknesses of the main game and turns them into strengths by designing a new game around them. I'd legitimately love to see this return in a future title, linear board, car, and all, just because as a concept it works incredibly well. The issues with these games weren't the car and the boards themselves, but the fact that they were being forced into a game mode that wasn't designed around them originally. But as we moved into the Switch era, it was looking like NDCube had finally learned their lesson. Super Mario Party was marketed as a return to form for the series, bringing back the coin to star mechanics and the non-linear boards. With the main 3D Mario franchise receiving a similar return to form at the start of the Switch era with Odyssey, things were looking very hopeful for Super Mario Party. But alas, though it was a step in the right direction, I'd argue it ended up being even less fun than the two games that preceded it. For one, there's the issue of the economy. Historically, the base price of stars in the past games has been 20 coins, making it important to win mini-games and try to steal coins from other players if you want to be the one getting the most stars. Super halves this to 10, and with this comes a few issues. For one, you get 5 coins at the start of the game! Not only does this practically eliminate all early game strategy, but it also makes mini-games essentially meaningless as well. You almost always have enough coins to get a star because the majority of spaces still grant 3 coins each time you land on them. And because they're so bountiful, coins become trivial as well. We're basically down to a 1 currency system just like with the mini-stars. So much strategy is lost as the game becomes just a simple race to the star. Get there first and you win, whoop-de-doo. Additionally, the boards, a whopping 4 of them, are all designed in a grid-based structure so that they could fit the movement of the side mode Partner Party. That mode is basically just co-op Mario Party, and I guess it's an interesting concept, but it ultimately ended up being something you pick up once, say that's neat, and forget about for the rest of the time you spend on the game. Because you move in a grid in this mode, though, all the boards in the game were designed with a grid-based structure in mind, and that made all of them feel way too similar, not helped by the extremely small selection of them to start with. Even minigames, which have been a high point of NDCube's Mario Party entries, took a hit here. They remain fun like in previous titles, but the addition of some new motion-controlled ones require using a single Joy-Con. Rather than having the ability to turn this off or at least play the rest of the game with a different control style, they decided to force the whole game to be played with a single Joy-Con per player. This is not comfortable. I have big hands. Please let me use the Pro Controller I bought from you, Nintendo. And if you have a Switch Lite, well, tough luck. You simply can't play this game on that console unless you buy additional Joy-Cons. This game just ended up being a mess. The additions of custom dice blocks and the partner system were nice ideas, but they couldn't salvage the dumpster fire that was the main gameplay. Even the main additional mode, River Survival, while better than the main game, doesn't even hold a candle to Bowser Party. In this mode, 4 players play in co-op to control a raft down the river, with the goal of reaching the end before time runs out. You can play co-op minigames to increase your time, and there are multiple split paths with different obstacles on the river to mix up the gameplay experience. On paper, this sounds like a great idea, but it falls apart when you realize there are only 10 co-op minigames, meaning you'll sometimes get repeat minigames in the same session of River Survival. That is just absurd. Super Mario Party was a failure in its one main goal, to bring the series back to its roots, and at this point, confidence was low that NDCube could ever deliver a Mario Party of the same caliber as the classic titles, which was really baffling. It couldn't be that hard to just copy what worked before, right? Hey, that's not a bad idea. Hey, go write that down. Enter Mario Party Superstars. It seemed NDCube realized that they weren't doing so great making their own new Mario Party, so they just gave us 3 of the old ones, and it ended up being the best game in the series in ages. The game takes 5 boards from the N64 games and remakes them on Switch, with an assortment of mini-games from across the whole series to accompany them. And despite the board selection being once again smaller than ideal, this game is just oozing with fun. Everything from the classics has been polished to a modern standard, and it just works. It had no motion control minigames, meaning you could use any controller you wanted, not to mention it even had full online play from the get-go, something Super didn't get until incredibly late in its life thanks to a patch. Superstars didn't offer anything new really, but that was the whole point of it. If the fans want the classic games, then give them the classics. And it appears that in developing this remake, NDCube finally got a grasp on what made the series so special in its earlier entries. As I mentioned previously, Super Mario Party Jamboree was shown off in the latest Nintendo Direct, and although it's technically a sequel to Super, it seems to really be following in the footsteps of Superstars, taking the classic formula and bringing it to brand new heights. The new boards are reminiscent of the classic style ones, only this time taking some inspiration not only from the original N64 games, but also from the boards of the Wii and GameCube era, where I think the level design of the series was at its finest. And on top of that, it looks like they've addressed every other issue I brought up in this video. Stars back to 20 coins, although funnily enough, the only time we see a star being bought in the trailer is when they're half off due to a flash sale on the Rainbow Galleria board. Mini games, motion control ones return, but if you want to use a Pro Controller, you can just turn them off. See, it was not that hard. I really hope I didn't just break my Joy-Con. Then there's the issue of not having enough boards. Well, we'll give you 5 brand new ones, and you know what? Throw in 2 classic ones from the retro games, that way it brings the total up to a respectable 7, which is actually tied for the second most in the series somehow. The main game here seems to not only bring back the classic formula, but improve upon it in a meaningful way without feeling half-baked. It's also worth mentioning that from what we've seen, this game looks and sounds great, with it having some of the best graphics and music of the series, at least from what we're able to see in the first trailer. But on top of this seemingly great main mode, the side modes look to be just as well thought out. For one, online multiplayer returns, which added so much to the previous Switch entries. But in addition to that main multiplayer option, there's now a mode where a whopping 20 players can compete online in minigames, of which there are now over 110, the most in the series. And because of this massive multiplayer mode, there's a great character select as well. As of now, we know of 21 characters, but there are likely still more since Ninja, who's confirmed to be playable, doesn't show up in this screen showcasing the other playable characters. My guesses for other unlockables are Pauline and Drybones, but they could definitely add far more than that. So let me know your character picks down in the comments. We also see in this clip here that boss battles make a return, and this appears to be part of the online since there are 6 players present on the scoreboard. Whether or not this is online exclusive is hard to tell, but I'm stoked to see these return regardless, as I think they're NDCube's best addition to the franchise in their previous titles. We also see this clip here in which 2 players are carrying a third to what looks to be this lighthouse, though the end goal may be somewhere else. This area looks to be massive as well, since we have this Goomba stack for scale, so I really hope it's at least somewhat explorable with secrets hidden throughout. This is likely taking place in this spot we saw in the intro as well, so it looks like you'll be able to travel between multiple islands in whatever this mode ends up being. It's possible it's part of a co-op mode since we see these 2 co-op minigames in the trailer as well, though it's really impossible to say for certain with the information we currently have. Although I did already touch on it earlier, I'd like to revisit the fact that they've decided to go with a combination of old and new boards, kind of in the style of Mario Kart in that series' Nitro and Retro tracks. I hope this becomes a staple of the series going forward, as it allows the board count to be larger without the same effort it takes to include all new boards. Not to mention, it pleases past fans of the series as well. I really hope in the future they add some of the Mario Party 8 boards in particular, either as DLC here or as part of the next game, because those boards, Koopa's Tycoon Town in particular, had such interesting gameplay mechanics that I'd love to see make a return on modern hardware. I feel crazy saying this, but Jamboree may genuinely end up being the best game in the franchise, which feels especially strange since that last new entries in the series I felt was the worst of the bunch. While this may end up being a repeat of Super, another failed promise of a return to form, we've already seen so much of this game addressing the issues of the past that I'm really optimistic for it. I feel like NDCube in remaking the past boards for Superstars really learned what made the classic game so great, and with that knowledge they've put it into the most ambitious effort we've seen not only in the era of modern Mario Party, but in the series' history as a whole. With this game seemingly packing so much of a punch, imagine what the next Mario Party after this will be like on Switch 2. 50-player online, massive interconnected boards with multiple star spots? I can only dream of the chaos, but for now, I'll just be looking forward to Jamboree's release on October 17th when I can finally ruin my friendships all over again with as much glee as I did in the classic Hudson Soft games. But at the end of the day, I'm just one person with opinions, so what do you all think? You're all people with opinions as well, I hope, so why don't you let me know those thoughts down in the comments below. Do you think I'm crazy for liking Bowser Party? Let me know. And if you like this video and want to see more speculation on Mario Party in the future, then make sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss out on that content. But with all that out of the way, thank you all so much for watching. I'm Jacob with the Game Block, signing off. See ya.